So help me God.
I will.
Congratulations.
From the big time to doing time again. Kwame Kilpatrick guilty 24 times over in a massive corruption investigation.
Excuse me.
For the rest of the kids.
What do you say to all those taxpayers who spent all that money?
The babies.
Millions of dollars.
Excuse me.
What about your son taking millions of dollars from our city?
So is this the final chapter in a scandal that has shaken the city of Detroit?
I want to tell you, Detroit, that you done set me up for a comeback.
What's really next for the former mayor, his wife Carlita, and his children? And how will Detroit finally close the book on this national embarrassment? Good evening. No, this is the ending few could have imagined, but one juror said there was so much evidence it turned her stomach.
Once a rising political star, he is now merely a part of the prison population, and he could be there for decades. After deliberating for nearly 3 weeks, the 8 women and 4 men who made up the jury delivered mostly guilty verdicts on charges ranging from racketeering to extortion. Kwame Kilpatrick, guilty, 24 counts. Bobby Ferguson, guilty on 9 counts. Bernard Kilpatrick convicted on 1 tax charge.
And tonight we have complete coverage of this historic case, beginning with Local 4 defender Kevin Dietz. And Kevin, you've been going over all the evidence that led to those guilty verdicts.
That's right, Carmen. Hundreds of exhibits were released late this afternoon here at federal court. Some of them were like this exhibit, which really hit home with jurors. It shows $300,000 in cash payments to Kwame Kilpatrick's credit cards, money that did not come from his salary as mayor. Other exhibits completely missed the mark. Take a look. A photo of a barber chair in Kwame Kilpatrick's office. Why is it a compelling exhibit? Because witnesses like Derek Miller and Emma Bell described this room to a T as the place Kwame would take them when he demanded thousands of dollars in cash bribes and kickbacks. A place witnesses testified the former mayor had swept for bugs to make sure the FBI wasn't listening. Now take a look at this secret video recording.
I don't have 3 people in this city that I trust on that level. I mean, that they wouldn't go. Most people will not go under the bus for you.
Bernard Kilpatrick was Synagro Representative James Rosendahl. Here's another video. In this one, Rosendahl putting expensive champagne into Bernard Kilpatrick's car shortly after this angry phone message.
Yeah, man, this is BK. I'd appreciate a call today. Vacation or no vacation.
What's ironic is these videos and audio failed to convince the jury. They acquitted Bernard Kilpatrick of the extortion. What did work is exhibits like bank records showing Kilpatrick living large and using civic fund checks intended for Detroit's kids on lavish vacations for himself. And Kwame Kilpatrick's vacation days are over for a long, long time. He had hoped after being found guilty that he could go home to be with his wife and kids in Texas waiting sentencing. But instead, the judge sent him packing straight to prison. Kwame Kilpatrick is home, Milan Federal Prison, inmate number 44678-039. After a strip search and a psychological exam, he hit the rack last night, waking up at 6 a.m. this morning to a bowl of oatmeal. He and fellow inmate Bobby Ferguson are not considered VIPs, no extra security, just your typical prisoners going through a pre-sentence investigation to help determine how long they will go to prison and in what state they will serve their time. It's a simple life Detroit's former dapper duo will have to get used to. Gone are the days of flashy $4,000 suits and TV cameras and reporters following their every move. Just 24 hours ago, they were on live television all day long as their verdicts were read.
Racketeering, Kwame Kilpatrick guilty of racketeering. Count 3, defendant Kwame Kilpatrick guilty.
Kwame Kilpatrick guilty of 24 felonies from racketeering to wire fraud, extortion to tax evasion. Bobby Ferguson guilty too of extortion and racketeering. The jury saying the 2 men used the mayor's office to pad their pockets. Kwame Kilpatrick listens in disbelief, saying, "You've got to be kidding me." His father Bernard breaks into tears, hugging his son, saying, "You got this." Kwame whispers back, "It's okay, Pops." Afterwards, Detroit's former hip-hop mayor emerges, stunned.
Any reaction at all?
Not at this
Everybody
time.
needs.
Bobby Ferguson seems unfazed.
God is good all the time.
Bernard Kilpatrick was pretty much spared by the jury. They could not decide if he was part of the conspiracy and acquitted him on charges of extortion. His only guilty verdict, a single tax charge. He tells Local 4 defenders the jury got it wrong when it comes to Kwame Kilpatrick.
What about your son taking millions of dollars from our city? What about Bobby Ferguson?
He didn't take a dime.
He didn't take a dime? He was
No.
found guilty, sir.
Kwame didn't take a dime.
The three convicts make their way to an attorney's office. Kwame's mom arrives. Tubs of barbecue ribs and all the fixins are brought in. They don't know it yet, but it will be their last supper together. It's back to court at 2 p.m. where a judge will decide if they will stay free on bond pending sentencing or will be locked up immediately. Judge Nancy Edmonds surprises many.
And she will, in fact, detain Kwame Kilpatrick and Bobby Ferguson. They are immediately remanded to the marshals. They are not going to be going home.
Kilpatrick and Ferguson stand up, take off their expensive sport coats and fancy cufflinks. The marshals put them in handcuffs. Kwame's mom says, "I love you." Kwame says, "No doubt, no fear." Off they go to Milan Prison, where tonight they had meat, vegetables, and a dinner roll. No media cameras, no fanfare. Lights out at 10 p.m. There are no guarantees, but inmates can request what prison they do their final time in. Kilpatrick is likely to request a prison in Texas. There is a minimum security prison in Fort Worth, close to his wife and kids who live in Grand Prairie, Texas. That decision will be made by the Bureau of Prisons. Reporting live at Federal Courthouse, Kevin Dietz, Defenders.
Now, Kevin, we know they're planning to appeal, but if that's not successful, how long could they spend in prison?
Well, Carmen, the range is 15 to 20 years, but if they want it to be closer to 15 years and maybe even below, there is something they can do. The feds say that Kwame Kilpatrick and Bobby Ferguson stole $83 million in dirty contracts, and many believe there is still millions of dollars hidden. If they were willing to show the FBI where that money was and return it to the taxpayers of Detroit, it is very likely they could shave several years off their sentence.
All right. Kevin, we'll get back to you in just a moment.
Now, those are the two key players in this, certainly, but Kwame Kilpatrick and Bobby Ferguson might not be the only people going to prison for this.
In fact, Local 4 defender Hank Winchester joins us now with a look at the other key players looking at jail time or prison time. Hank?
Carmen and Steve, imagine what this was like for Kwame Kilpatrick, because some of the key players who took the stand, who cut deals themselves, well, they testified about Kwame Kilpatrick's scheming ways, his love of money. And some of these people called Kwame Kilpatrick a friend for many, many years. They're the other key players in the federal case. First up, Victor Mercado. He was one of the original four, the former chief of the water department who, like Ferguson and the Kilpatricks, was facing federal charges. When the trial got underway, Mercado was in the courtroom, his attorneys by his side. But not long into the trial, he vanished. We quickly learned he cut a deal. Another key player who turned into a witness for the prosecution, Derek Miller. He was a longtime friend of Kwame Kilpatrick's and a City Hall insider. Miller cut his deal before the trial got underway. He testified during the trial and provided an insider's perspective into City Hall corruption. Carl Cato pleaded guilty to tax charges, and he agreed to cooperate with the government, even wearing a wire which captured various conversations with Bernard Kilpatrick that were played out in court. And remember Emma Bell. She also cut a deal and also testified. Remember, she was the woman who revealed that she had large amounts of cash in her bra and delivered that money to Kwame Kilpatrick's office. Good friends who took the stand talking about Kwame Kilpatrick and apparently his love of money. Now, Victor Mercado, even though he has cut his deal, he too, though, will ultimately end up spending time in prison. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Hank.
Still more to come on that one.
For sure.
And still ahead here, clearing the air of corruption.
The defenders show us how this conviction is helping Detroit's image. Plus,
Did I call anybody a racist?
I didn't say
Did I call anybody a racist?
I did not say you did. Counselor, you asked interrogative
Get your
questions.
finger out of
I
my
did too.
face. Get your finger out of my face.
drama inside and outside the courtroom will take you behind the scenes for the tense moments, including what our sources are saying about what's next for Carlita Kilpatrick and her kids.
I'm hopeful. I am. As Dr. King was, that there will be a time where everyone will be judged by the content of their character.
Kwame Kilpatrick.
Kwame Kilpatrick.
The Kilpatrick scandal.
All Kwame Kilpatrick wants to see.
Inside and outside the courtroom, and tonight the defenders are taking you behind the scenes. The Kilpatrick case has consumed newscasts, newspapers, and social media.
That's for sure, but there's a good chance that you don't know everything that we have seen and heard. Tonight, Local 4 defender Karen Drew joins us live. Karen, a lot certainly goes on when we're not on the air.
You know, that's right, Steve and Carmen. A lot of, quote, Kwame drama has been happening inside the courthouse. And unless you read every single headline and every single blog, you may have missed some of the things that went on. So tonight, we take you behind the scenes, not only of what happened inside federal court, we take you behind the scenes and undercover with the Kilpatrick family in Texas. Now to the stories behind the scenes of the Kwame Kilpatrick corruption trial, and there were many. From the sleeping juror kicked off the panel, to attorney Susan Van Dusen tripping and breaking her nose, causing a one-day delay, to attorney Gerald Evelyn possibly suffering a heart attack inside the federal courthouse.
Some tightness in my chest. I started getting double vision, and then I had some really pronounced nausea. I went between the podium and defense counsel's table. I sweat through all my clothes.
Are you ignorant?
That's why I asked the question.
Remember defense attorney Mike Ratai getting into a shoving fight outside of court with another reporter?
Be a man. You're going to question me
turn
about
around
being a
and you
man?
walk away. You want
going
the
to
last
challenge me
word?
to be a man?
And who would have thought a simple trip to Walmart could have caused so much drama? But it did. Kilpatrick caught on surveillance camera getting a $2,000 money order from a Chicago pastor. He never informed the Department of Corrections about the income.
Being that I'm Kwame Kilpatrick and this is Michigan and Detroit, and the rules are different for me. So, you know, it's definitely something that I want to make sure that we stay on the right side, which we are. It's not against any of the special conditions that I have.
The controversy didn't end there. Later, Kilpatrick was sent to jail for the weekend for not reporting income, a parole violation. Soon afterwards, the former mayor turned the cameras on the media in the name of a documentary he was doing on himself.
I want you to sit back, relax, open your mind, because I am the real Kwame Kilpatrick.
Then there was this photo op at the end of the trial. Kilpatrick's wife, Carlita, and their 3 sons show up in support of their husband and father. It will be the only day his family is in court.
A jury convicted the Southlake resident yesterday on a bunch of corruption charges.
Today in Texas, these are the headlines the Kilpatrick family woke up to. News about their father's guilty verdict, leaving many wondering what is going to happen to the family. Remember, somehow the Kilpatricks were able to afford living in this 5,000 square foot, 5-bedroom, 4-bath mini mansion in the wealthy Dallas suburb of Grand Prairie.
I have a nice house. A nice life is a different thing.
The defenders also showed you how Carlita and Kwame drove around in this Escalade and lived the high life, getting their car detailed and shopping at the finest stores. Remember, Carlita told the court she did not work, and Kwame basically said he was broke and couldn't afford his legal team. That's why taxpayers were paying for his defense at the price tag of $125 an hour. So now, with Kilpatrick behind bars, how will Carlita and the boys survive financially? Will the boys still ride the same school bus? Will Carlita still be able to greet them at the door as our defenders' cameras caught in the past? Or will Carlita need to get a job to pay for that fancy house? Well, we do know the former First Lady has already started soliciting for donations so she could send her boys to private schools. And no matter how you think or what you feel about that verdict, your heart has to go out to those Kilpatrick boys. Now they are going to have to live their lives without their father for 10, perhaps 20 years. Carmen, Steve.
All right, thank you, Karen. Coming up, moving on and leaving the corruption behind.
Yeah, we'll see why local city leaders think these verdicts will really help rebuild Detroit's image. That's next.
To all of you who have stuck with me through very difficult times, to all of you who've prayed for me, I'm sorry for the embarrassment and the disappointment the events of the past few days have caused you.
A city's reputation tarnished by corruption.
We want Detroit to grow again, and we want it to be fiscally sound.
Now with Kwame Kilpatrick behind bars, many say it's time to move on.
Well, so many people hope it's a new beginning, certainly for the city of Detroit, finally moving away from the corruption that has soiled our national reputation for a decade.
Local 4 defender Hank Winchester joins us now. And Hank, this is a big jump forward for Detroit's recovery.
It certainly is, and you're going to hear local political leaders saying the exact same thing. But at the end of the day, we have to remember, for the last few years, Kwame Kilpatrick has been making news around the world, and for all the wrong reasons. The trial is now over. The verdict is in. It's time to put the Kilpatrick corruption case behind us. Local leaders are hoping this will help the region take one big step forward.
We have to now close that, get that behind us and say we want Detroit to grow again and we want it to be fiscally sound.
It's finally given us the potential now to say, okay, can we move the region forward without all the talk about what's going to happen in the Kwame Kilpatrick corruption trial?
At the time, Kwame Kilpatrick was the youngest person ever to be elected mayor of Detroit. He was filled with promise and potential, but that is now all a distant memory.
Had he kept his powder dry and done the kind of job I think he could have done for Detroit, I bet you he'd be the front runner trying to succeed Carl Levin today.
Will the ending of this historic federal case help the city bring closure to the days of corruption in Detroit? Is this a new beginning for the city of Detroit? Here's what people are saying today.
We don't want this to happen in the future, but certainly put it behind us and let's get on with it.
And it doesn't help the city because we still have the same losses. We still have the same people getting contracts from this city. We still have the same problems with the EFM, and we had a loss of revenues for years. That didn't have anything to do with Kwame Kilpatrick.
I'm glad it's over. We can take some of the attention off of this whole matter and hopefully start putting the city in a more positive light.
A lot of different opinions there. Besides the local political leaders, Patterson, Hackle, and Facano, we also heard yesterday from the mayor of Detroit, Dave Bing, and also the governor, both men saying it's time to move forward. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Hank. And coming up, we go inside the Kilpatrick case.
We're going to hear more from our own investigators who have spent years uncovering information. Up next, how did we get to this point, and where do we go from here?
This unethical, illegal lynch mob mentality has to stop.
What do you say to all those taxpayers who spent all that money?
The strain on their families, on their jobs, their personal lives.
Who took the money? Yeah, you were found guilty, sir. Any comment?
They're the team who asks the tough questions and uncover the big stories. The defenders, never backing down during the entire Kilpatrick investigation. And we are joined in the studio now by Kevin Dietz, Karen Drew, and Hank Winchester. Welcome. Yeah.
The three of you have, I would think collectively, spent hundreds of hours covering this. We haven't heard a reaction, though, from any of you. Surprise at what has transpired over these last 24 hours?
Think he'd be found guilty of 24 out of 30 counts?
You know, when I listened every day to the testimony, the evidence was there. I really did. We started hearing rumors over 10 years ago that Kilpatrick was dirty. We chased down these leads and stories for years. Then the indictments came, then the trial and the evidence. And at the end of the day, some 30 plus people went to jail for this, and they finally ultimately got the two ringleaders, and that's Bobby Ferguson and Kwame Kilpatrick.
I think you do have to give credit, though, to the jury, because, I mean, they really took the time to listen to the evidence, and I think a lot of people went in thinking it was going to be a hung jury, but it was really encouraging to see the system work.
Yeah. And I was surprised by the detention hearing. That surprised me. I didn't think that they would be taken into custody right away, and you mentioned that a few days beforehand, if this played out, that they may be asked to do that, prosecution may ask to do that, so that surprised me.
You had a chance to talk with some of the jurors and how they felt. There was one woman who was quoted as saying, you know, what I learned turned my stomach.
Yeah. She was a woman, a juror who had twice voted for Kwame Kilpatrick. And I will say this, in talking with the men and women of the jury, they said that they did what the judge ordered them to do, pay attention to the evidence, block out everything else, and that's exactly what they did.
I was there for jury selection, and they asked question after question, can you be fair, can you be honest? And these people, some of them said, I know I voted for Kilpatrick, I'm aware of what's been going on, but we will follow our oath. We will be fair. We'll look at the evidence and make a decision, and I think that's what they did.
They really did.
Now, you know, you have to, just judging from looking at the way he carried himself throughout the 5 months of the trial, and there was an air of confidence, pretty much, that he was going to beat this.
Well, we actually would talk in the defender's office and say, is there something we don't know? Is there something that's going to be presented? Because he walked in with this air of just such confidence, and we thought, I think he thinks he's got this in the bag.
But you know, Kevin, that
well, yesterday, though,
he was shocked.
He was stunned. I
He
think
really thought he was going.
I think that he thought that the major charges were going to either be hung or acquitted. And when he heard guilty, he was like, what are you talking about? He never thought it was going to happen.
When you approached him on the stairs, he appeared to be physically shaken as well.
His eyes were glazed over as if he didn't know what was going on, and he just sort of appeared at the top of the steps. You know, he was waiting for his ride to come, but he was
speechless,
stunned.
which is rare for Kwame Kilpatrick.
Right.
He didn't want to say
Let's talk about the
anything.
detention hearing, because he probably thought too, well, at least I'll get a chance to go home and say goodbye to my family.
It's rare for white-collar criminals to go immediately to jail. They do remand prisoners who are involved in guns and drugs, but in white-collar crimes, they usually let you go home and prepare for the sentencing. But in this case, the judge decided not to.
Why not?
She said 2 reasons. Perhaps all of this missing money, they might be a flight risk, and 2, that Kwame Kilpatrick had his chances with other courts and other probation officers and other parole officers, and he lied to them over and over again, and that's why he had a tether on him, and that's why they had to send him to prison for 1 weekend, because he just can't follow the rules. So they said, I'm not taking any chances. I'm sorry, I'm just going to.
And the judge had mentioned, too, that he had said at one point, I'm never going to prison again. So it was almost in a sense like, you said this, I need to take this kind of not as a threat, but as a concern that we need to make sure that you do.
You know, Kwame had said so many times, the media is out to get me, the media is enjoying this. Just a little bit about the emotion of the day yesterday. Nobody took pleasure in any of this.
No,
it was
so
tragic.
Sad.
Yeah,
it's tragic because at the end of the day, and you mentioned it in your story, and we have time and time again, there's still 3 children in Texas that won't have a relationship with their dad.
And we have our city now that we're looking for an emergency financial manager. And
Well,
we're not
we
saying
have to
that's
move on.
all him, but it's like we all are broken apart because of what has happened.
And what could have been.
Yeah.
And I
You know,
think
with
collectively, the
somebody who had
media,
a
I think the
very
media will
promising
start to look at ways to move forward, and let's put this chapter behind us, and let's really see what the media can do to start moving forward.
You guys did remarkable work.
Yes, you did.
really did.
And we want to tell you that we were
Real
so proud of you.
service.
Kevin Dietz, Karen Drew, Hank Winchester, thank you so much. And be sure to visit clickondetroit.com for complete coverage of the Kilpatrick case, from a timeline of events to exclusive video. You'll find the link right there on the homepage. Any last thoughts, Steve?
No.
Want to say good night?
Good night.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you back here tonight at 11.